Overall sales for Q1 are down less than 5% compared to last year. True or false?
True.
What can you say about days on market so far for inventory in 2026?
The time on market as a whole is getting longer, but it varies widely by market segment.
Coming out of the Palm Beach Boat Show, do you get the sense that Current Yachts can help buyers with any boat purchase, new or pre-owned?
Surprisingly, yes, that is my impression.
What was the most impressive yacht that you saw at the show this year?
It was the Ocean Walker S60 Power Catamaran. I was not expecting that. It definitely was the best value at the show.
Welcome back to the Current Yachts podcast, Full Displacement. We're here today to talk about our lessons learned from the Palm Beach International Boat Show that was just a week ago. And we're going to take the opportunity to discuss this first quarter market report that we were able to extract to give you a sense of what's been happening January, February, March. This episode is being recorded on April 5. And I'm here with Austin from the Current Yachts team. Hello, Austin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Marilyn. How are you doing?
Really good. It's a nice Easter weekend and going to talk about what we saw in Palm Beach first. Care to take the lead on that? What were your thoughts on this year's boat show?
Well, Palm Beach Boat Show has grown a lot over the years, and now it's becoming one of the large boat shows in Florida, which I like. This year, though, was a little bit different. We saw a lot of, for the first time, I have to say, I saw a lot of 23 and 24 models for sale at the boat show. It was interesting.
What does that tell you? Just that the 2026 inventory hasn't made its way into the dealerships yet?
I think it has. But I think there's still a lot of old inventory left at the dealers because we saw during COVID, it was the opposite. There was nothing available on the market. There was no inventory. And now we see the boats are getting sticky. They stay at the dealers for a long time. The sales cycle has slowed down and availability is absolutely much better. But demand seemed to be slowing down a little bit. Hence why the cycle is slow.
Yeah, we are most definitely in a buyer's market. Nobody can deny this. What we can qualify when we review the data later today is that it's not as drastic a decline as one would think, but can you speak to perhaps what's going to continue to happen this year in terms of advertised discounts, for example? What did you see in Palm Beach and did that surprise you? Did that seem normal? Is this more discounting than normal? People want to know that.
No, I don't see the crisis that some people have talked about. What I do see is that during COVID and at the end of COVID, dealers bought a lot of boats. They bought a lot of inventory because boats were flying off the shelves. So I think many dealers took in a little bit more than they should have. And then when the market has come back to normal and maybe slightly below normal, and now we have a tariff issue on top of that, I think a lot of dealers are stuck with a little bit of inventory, but I think this is a temporary issue. We will see it stabilize. I mean, as soon as the tariffs come back to somewhat normal, these boats will sell. People will be more motivated to buy new boats again. So I don't see this as a critical warning to us in the boat market, but it's just a situation we haven't seen before. That's really all it is. Discount-wise, I think what we're seeing is a natural effect of having a lot of stock. The dealers that are sitting on 22, 23, and 24 models, they would like to sell them and they are offering them close to cost. And some dealers are taking a hit and offering them at cost or even below at this point. Because I talked to a lot of dealers and there's a lot of, let's say, willingness to get this stock sold this spring. It's a huge opportunity for buyers. And I don't think any buyer should be worried about buying a 2024 or 2025. Even if it has been on a few boat shows, it might have 100 hours on the engines because the warranty will not start until the owner takes ownership of the boat, meaning registering the boat. So every buyer will still get a full warranty on whatever they're buying.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to circle back on the prior episode that we had with InfoLink, where we talked about the trends in the market, and perhaps days on market getting longer for new inventory. That means that dealers have to start making payments on that inventory, the curtailments, as they're called. And when this happens, of course, the motivation to sell is greater than ever. So there are going to be some perhaps in this category. We're not saying that's the case for everybody, but for sure, there's going to be more motivation. What specifically have you seen as far as motivation? How did that manifest in this show,
Well, I
especially?
think you're right. I think you're right that dealers are starting to have payments on their stock, which is, I mean, this is why we're seeing them, the willingness to come down in price. But again, this is a temporary issue. So we also see as dealers or brokers that, um, and this is just my impression, I feel like traffic is picking up. We're getting more inquiries on both new and used boats now versus what we got just a month and a half, 2 months ago. Something is changing. I feel like buyers are coming back, and maybe it's because buyers see it's a buyer's market. They now want to take advantage of the opportunity. But no matter what, the discounts are there, the stock is here. So why are we not all taking advantage of it? I feel like buyers should now start considering coming to a dealer like Current Yachts or whatever dealer they're comfortable with to look for a new boat, even if it's not in their immediate area. It is an opportunity that might not come again.
Right. And just to emphasize, that's typically not the norm because a lot of the brands will have established dealer networks. And we're definitely not looking to compete and replace those dealers. We're just saying, and we're seeing that we've been approached by some of these brands that are saying, hey, listen, we're very much hurting on this particular boat. If you can bring us a buyer, we'll work something out, which is a bit of a switch, right? From what I would say is the norm. What about, I guess, dock talk? What have you heard from manufacturer standpoint? I think you had one particular instance or two where you thought this is a little new. Do you want to share what that was?
Yes, yeah. So normally when I walk these shows, I see dealers holding on to their brands and they're very hesitant to partner with others or outside dealers, outside brokers. Now we're seeing the opposite happen. But I saw at this boat show, which I have not seen before, I see brands basically now selling direct in addition to having dealer. They've kind of gone away from exclusivity. They're inviting dealers that have not sold this brand before to take part in the sales process and kind of market the boat to their own clients. So this is brand new in the industry. And it's just, like I said before, it's another confirmation that we now see a buyer's market. And I think this is how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to actually report on those numbers, as I was saying earlier. Can you share the one data point you had pulled for us on how many new boats were listed in Florida alone? Do you have that number handy?
Yes. So after the show, when I got all this impression from the manufacturers and dealers, I was a little bit surprised. There must be some numbers here that I have missed. So I went online and I looked for new boats, 22 to 60 feet, manufactured in 22 to 24, listed as new boats online. And just in Florida, I found over 600 boats. So that doesn't mean that there are 600 boats. It means some of these boats are listed in a couple of places, so it will count them too. But it means that there's a lot of new boats from 22, 23, and 24 listed for sale, which is, again, it's unheard of. During COVID, you couldn't find a new boat for sale. It was sold before it was shipped from the factory or shipyard in Europe. And now we have a bunch of these listed for sale at local dealers.
Yeah, I think what's clear is we're really distancing ourselves from that post-COVID boom. It's long gone, right? Let's put it this way. So for those sellers who still have the expectations of pulling the highest numbers in the market, it's not going to be there. For the buyers who are looking for the right deal and the right boat, they will potentially find something really good to meet their needs at a price that's very attractive, more attractive than it has been in probably 10 years, right?
Absolutely. I think this is the only time buyers have now the opportunity of reaching out to a dealer or a broker like us and say, hey, I am looking for such and such. Can you help me find the right boat and the right dealer and work with the dealer for me? And we can secure these buyers a good deal, a full warranty, and avoid all the hassle if they did it themselves. They don't have to sit at the dealer and jump through all the hoops. We can do it all for them. Like, I mean, and this has been done in the car market now for a couple of decades. And it's becoming the norm of buying a new car, you use a car broker. Now we're seeing the opportunity for new buyers in the boat market. And if
Mhm.
I was a boat buyer, I would absolutely do it.
So we're going to get into these numbers next to compare how this first quarter of 2026 has compared to last year. And for those of you who are not familiar, perhaps you've worked with a yacht broker and you've seen similar stats before. But in case you haven't, I will explain where the data comes from and give you a little bit of warning too as to how much we can rely on this data. So the majority of boat sales are actually reported directly by dealers and brokers inside of a platform that is advertising the boat for sale on one end, that's the public facing, and in the back end allows dealers and brokers to manage inventory. And so you're able to report as you deactivate a listing how much it's sold for. And this data is exclusively for yacht brokers and for them to share with their clients as relevant for, say, a particular segment or particular model. And it's generally incomplete by a long shot. Why? First of all, it's only broker transactions. You're not going to have, for example, private boat sales, private buyer to private seller. That's just not going to be reported. There is no way for us to guarantee the accuracy of the data. So I'm not saying that there's any incentive for a dealer or a broker to put down incorrect information, but I'm just cautioning the audience here. We cannot verify it. A lot of the time, we cannot. Now, if we have a colleague who sold a similar boat to one we have listed and want to check on what exactly came down for this particular deal, we can always make a phone call, just like, realtors do all the time. But on a macro level, that data is just as good as we can have it with limited ways to verify it and make it more robust than what we have strictly from the brokerage slice of the market. Another aspect, which Austin, you can confirm as well from your experience, is that new boat sales are notoriously wildly underrepresented. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. I mean, especially now these days, because now we have manufacturers and dealers. They're both selling new boats, and manufacturers have traditionally not really reported it, at least not in real time. So we will not have that data at all. And should these transactions go through a second dealer, or I mean, like if a dealer outside the dealer network buys a boat from a manufacturer, it's not certain that they will report the sale. So we have a lot of unknowns right now, and it's really not possible for us to be anywhere near accurate. But we have
Right.
the numbers we have. So
And from my experience working for different brokers and dealers, I also can tell you that when you have a quote unquote, canned listing, you don't always go through the trouble of closing that one off and sharing how much that particular hull number sold for to duplicate and create a new one. Now, you might create a new one to reset days on market, and even that is pretty rare. So typically you end up with kind of window shopping for a, model ABC, but we're not going to see every ABC sale reported, especially by a new boat dealer. That just doesn't happen. So I wanted to caution you as we look at these numbers. It's not perfect, but it's a good assessment of what we can share. And if anything, it's a really good comparison from one quarter to the next when you compare 2 years because you are more or less measuring the same thing. Okay. I will share my screen next so we can jump into the numbers. Okay, so I'm sharing with you the report for sales in Q1 of 2026 compared to the prior first quarter of 2025. As you can see, overall, there are fewer boats sold, which is driven primarily from new boats. Again, remember the caveat that we we take the data for as good as it can be, but it's not necessarily all encompassing. So what we can see here is an overall decline of about 5% in this quarter in terms of units compared to the prior year. Now, what you can see here is that the sold price for a pre-owned boat is going to be about 10, 11% less this quarter, Q1 of 2026, compared to the same quarter last year. Okay. Now, the median is up. So again, that would tend to tell us that there's more of the larger boats based upon the price difference we observe here. But as we come down here, I can also show you that the boat length came down a little bit So, what do you make of that? And I haven't actually extracted all the data to show it to you. This is just a high level summary. But we're seeing prices go down 11%, let's say, versus a decrease in size that's only really marginal. The length is, let's say, 4% less, right? So, slightly smaller boat, but a much bigger price difference. That would be a softening of the market, right?
I would say so. I mean, keep in mind in 2022 to 2024, the availability was low, demand was high. So a lot of the same boats were worth more at the time. And now we have a different situation. We're starting in 2025. The situation changed. There was a lot of newer boats on the market that are now coming back for sale. They were bought in 2022, 2023, and 2024, and in 2025. Many of them, after COVID, came back for sale. Well, the statistics will not really work with us and give us a total picture here. We can see that total changes, but we cannot see the hidden numbers.
Okay, so it might be a bit difficult to draw an assessment because I don't have the average model year. We can pull this for the next quarterly report that we'll put together. But again, high level, overall number of units is down about 5% across the board, mostly driven by new boats. The price point of boats is down about 11%, and we're seeing that there's also a decrease in the boat size as well. Now, what's interesting is the days on market, and that surprised me because people are saying, well, the market is really not supporting, higher price points for sellers and boats are sitting. And actually, what we're finding is the days on market is actually going down. Are sellers less unrealistic in 2026 than they were in 2025? What do you think?
I think that what we're again seeing is that brokers and sellers are being smarter and resetting their listings more often. I think listing time is increasing drastically, but you know as well as I do, when someone takes the boat off and makes a new listing and posts it again, we start from zero.
Yeah, it'd be hard to think though that people did not do this in Q1 of 2025 either. So I'm not sure if we can draw that conclusion,
No,
but thanks for listening this far. We really appreciate it. Make sure to like this video and subscribe so you can see more of it when we publish new content. Now back to the show.
so what I have seen is that from early to mid 2025, sellers started to get anxious, and so did brokers, because many were fearing that we were heading towards a recession. But then it didn't happen, or at least it didn't happen yet. So now we have something else to worry about. We have tariffs, we have other things to worry about.
There's another metric I wanted to pull from the data that I'm putting on screen now, and it is whether or not boats were open to co-brokerage more in this quarter than last quarter. And what we are seeing is that actually there were more co-brokered boat in the past quarter than there were in that same quarter in 2025. There were more by 8%, which is a pretty
Yeah.
big number.
And I think I know why. When things were flying smoothly, less brokers were willing to share.
But were things really flying off the shelf first quarter of 2025? I don't really think
Oh,
so.
no, it wasn't, but it was the end of the COVID era. They were still selling boats. And I feel like a lot of brokers were still on that train. We're like, oh, we can sell it. We don't need anyone else, blah, blah, blah. We want the whole commission. But as things have changed, now more brokers are willing to do co-brokerage. And I think that's a good thing. They're doing sellers a service by doing so.
Another data point I wanted to measure and share is the percentage of sold price as a percentage of list price. Again, you'd have to look at the granular data inside of a segment to verify if this is based off of a already discounted list price or the very original list price. But here, overall, we're seeing that the sellers are retaining a little bit more of their equity because they are reaching closer to 93% of their asking price compared to 92% in the past quarter for 2025. So Q1 of 2025. So that's good news, I would say, for a market that's supposedly tanking. That's definitely a good data point. I wanted next go into some of the class breakdowns to share with you some of the trends we are seeing. If there's one thing we've learned from this podcast with InfoLink last week, it is that not all segments are behaving the same. And what I wanted to show you here through these examples in particular is for a few chosen, what we call classes in the back end of the Yacht World data, is the segments of powerboats to begin with here. So center console units sold are actually up almost 2.5%. Express cruisers are down almost 2%. Freshwater fishing is up and flying up 20%. So that's again speaking to the fact that you're going to see a wide disparity in those numbers.
Also, a little bit earlier too, when we talked about boat length was coming down a little bit. Can this be the reason center console freshwater fishing is up? So people are buying slightly more of those boats, maybe not less of the other ones, but maybe more of these boats, and that pulls down the average size. I don't know.
Yeah. And in absolute numbers, right? If we're comparing the Power Cat segment, which has only about 100-ish units sold, of course, when you go from 110 to 101, this 9 unit represents an 8% drop. It's clear that you have to also look at the whole critical mass, to understand the math behind the changes that we're sharing. The runabouts too are up significantly, which is a little bit countercurrent to what we've heard from InfoLink on the overall segment performance. Saltwater fishing is up. Trawlers are up, and I could say that this is something we're noticing too. We're getting a lot more inquiries on trawler and long distance liveaboard vessels. So that's an interesting point. And we can also see the time on market to the right here. So the days on market change. What is suffering the most is actually the runabout and the trawlers. So that's very interesting. Perhaps these are the segments where the sellers were least realistic with their pricing. So something to keep an eye on. And
Yeah.
then just as a side note, the sale category as a whole is actually smaller than Santa consoles, for example, but we keep an eye on that as well. And we're seeing that the unit count is down 8%. So that's a significant number for all sale. And inside of that segment, the sale catamaran is down nearly 5%. So we're definitely seeing also on the right hand side here a degradation of the days on market. So that kind of tells you again how different those segments behave, right?
This is, I mean, the boat market is so different than the housing market, the car market. You have these fluctuations in trends, you have fluctuation in needs based on how we're being sold products. So we always have this change. Like I've seen this in California too over like 15 years. It's pretty interesting.
And another thing I wanted to share was how, if I could just show you the data for the days on market, the data for uh, sold to list ratio, right? So, in other words, how much of my asking price am I retaining as a seller? And that number is degrading uh, a lot in those powerboat segments. We see very few positives. And when they're positive, it's not by a lot. So now we're seeing that degradation across the board. And in sale, no one's spared as well, right? So that's you should expect as a seller to see more aggressive offers from buyers. It doesn't mean that this is the only one you'll get, but you're going to see more buyers trying. And that's something to be prepared for. All of this provides you data points to make your decisions, whether you're looking to list or buy a boat. It's very difficult, right, to have a cohesive data set for these entire segments, put them all together. We're getting directionally a good sign that things are not as dire as some perhaps put it, but we are definitely seeing some challenges and some are more severe in some of these classes. So If there's a particular boat type segment that you'd like to explore with us, let us know. We can actually extract data at the transaction level and show you what we call the comps, right? So you can see what boats like yours have been selling for. Has that market degraded? By how much? What can you expect? We like to say that we don't have crystal balls. We don't know what the future will bring. We can only see what's happening right now. And by pulling data points from the sailboat's data, as close to present time as possible, we help you make the best decisions. So to summarize, Palm Beach Boat Show felt soft, definitely a buyer's market. Austin, you're having conversations you haven't had before where we have manufacturers that are a little bit more collaborative with non-dealers to just, hey, bring me a buyer, right? There's more of that anxiety to make that inventory move. And we're also seeing a little bit larger incentives at this present time to try and remove that inventory from the shelf from 23, 24, even 22, you said, right?
Yeah, some 22s are still in the market.
Very good. Well, we'll do this analysis again for the next quarter, and we'll report back after every major boat show to tell you what we're seeing in the market. Thanks again for tuning in. And again, if you have questions, the best thing to do is to contact us at hello@currentyachts.com, and we can generate a data report specific to your circumstance. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day. Fair winds.